Okay, here we go. We're back to chapter, I don't remember what chapter we were on, but here we are. The Whangdoodle was truly an extraordinary creature. He was the size of a small pony. His face was big and friendly, with large brown eyes and long, fair eyelashes. His eyebrows were arched, giving him a constant look of surprise. His muzzle looked soft as velvet, and when he grinned, he displayed strong, horse-like teeth which protruded over his lips. His antlers were amazingly large and very handsome. He held his head proudly, in keeping with his generally regal hair. His body was a warm gray-brown color, and his small, rather thin tail was fashioned into a love knot. On his hind feet he wore a pair of old, pink knitted bedroom slippers with floppy tassels. Ben remembered the Proc's instructions. "Your Majesty, thank you for allowing us to see you." The Proc tells me you've given him a lot of trouble. I didn't want to see you, not at first. Then I confess that I did feel some slight desire to make contact again after all these years. I do get lonely. Not that I mind, and I wouldn't go back. Not ever, even if you begged and pleaded. Humans can't be trusted. Have a piece of wodge. He held out a large box of candy. The children hesitated. Come on, you must be starving. I'm sure you haven't eaten for ages. They hungrily accepted the delicious sweets. Aren't they good? The Whangdoodle munched one happily. This is my favorite kind. I have a very sweet tooth, you know. Would you like to see it? He asked Lindy. Oh, yes, thank you, Your Majesty. The Whangdoodle grinned. It's this one here, he said, indicating it with his tongue. See the little daisy on it? Why, that is a sweet tooth, Lindy said in surprise. Thought you'd like it. All Whangdoodles are born with one, you know. A shadow passed over his brow. At least they used to be, he added sadly. He helped himself to another piece of wodge. As I was saying, you look different from the children I used to know. Cleaner, taller, neater. Are you an exception, or do all children look like you? Tom answered, I don't think we're different from other children, Your Majesty. How is your world these days? The Proc never tells me anything because he doesn't want to upset me. Do you still use that barbaric rack and boiling oil on your enemies? Do you still fight over territory and so on? We still have wars, Your Majesty, if that's what you mean, Ben replied. The Whangdoodle looked depressed. Thought so. It didn't seem as though things were going to change much when I left. He began to turn blue. Lindy said, Your Majesty, you're changing color. I am? He looked at his stomach. So I am. I do it without thinking, you know. Can you really turn any color you want? Asked Ben. Yes, I can turn plaid if I want to, but that's a hard one. What's the hardest color of all to do? Lindy inquired. Oh, I would say flang. What's flang? Tom chuckled. It's nothing to laugh about, young man. It's every color of the rainbow all at once. I seldom manage that one. Mind you, omnipresent blue is pretty tough as well, and crash pink. Is that pretty? Asked Lindy. It's stunning, absolutely stunning, replied the Whangdoodle. Harder than plaid? Oh, 10 times harder. Or is it 11? Lilac is my favorite color, Lindy told him. It is now. Well, allow me the honor. The Whangdoodle slowly turned the most beautiful shade of lilac that Lindy had ever seen. That's lovely, thank you, Your Majesty. Oh, not at all. Have some more wodge. The Whangdoodle suddenly winced. Oh dear, my poor feet. I know it's rather informal, but would you mind if I put them up for a while? I'm due for a new pair of slippers, you see, and right now my feet are killing me. Ben said, Oh, don't worry about us, Your Majesty. Is there anything we can do for you? You could pass me that footstool over there. Ben fetched it and placed it in front of the throne. Ah, that's better. The Whangdoodle stretched his legs and smiled with relief. Now, explain something to me. I was told that there were 4 of you in the expeditionary party, that your guide was Professor somebody or other. He's been poking around about the country a lot. Why isn't he here? Taking turns, the children told the Whangdoodle all about the professor from the day they had met him at the zoo to their sad parting at the bridge. The Whangdoodle looked thoughtful. Well, I must say it's a pity your friend couldn't make it. I hoped I might get a moment to chat with him. I fancy we'd have a lot in common, and a good conversation is hard to come by these days. It's very quiet here, you know, and I don't have a wife. Sad that. I don't have anyone to carry on the family name. Makes me very blue sometimes. Pale blue. He changed back to the appropriate color. Lindy said, "You'd like the professor, Your Majesty. He's the nicest person in the whole world next to Mummy and Daddy. Is there any way you could help him get here? He wants to meet you so badly." "I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do. He had exactly the same chance as you. You saw the bridge, he didn't. I can't provide him with a new imagination now, can I?" "I'm not sure he did have the same chance," Tom said. "Remember, he had to outguess and outsmart every creature in the land to help us. He gave so much of himself. It's no wonder he couldn't concentrate at the end." "Yes, I understand that, and I admire the fellow." The Wangdoodle nodded solemnly. Ben had a sudden inspiration. "How about if you came back with us across the bridge? You could meet the professor that way." The Wangdoodle shook his head. "Impossible. If your friend can't see the bridge, then I doubt that he'd be able to see me. That's a simple, undeniable fact." There was another moment's silence in the beautiful white room. Then Lindy said in her clear, practical voice, "You know, the really sad thing about all this is that if the professor could have come here, he probably would have made you another Wangdoodle." The Wangdoodle looked at her with wide, unblinking eyes. Then he carefully said, "Would you mind explaining that last statement, young lady?" "Well, you see, he's a professor of genetics. You know, he can make life. He told us he could." She gave a matter-of-fact wave of her hand. "If he can make life, he can make a Wangdoodle, wouldn't you say?" The Wangdoodle looked at the boys. "Is she talking sense?" "He did tell us that the secret of life had been discovered, Your Majesty," said Ben. "He told us we had a great responsibility on our hands," added Tom. "I would say so," replied the Wangdoodle, raising his eyebrows. He looked stunned. "Well, well, well. What an incredible fellow your professor must be. It is indeed a shame that we could not meet." Lindy said, "He could be rested by now. If we help him, he might just make it across the bridge." "It doesn't really seem right to be here without him," remarked Tom. The Wangdoodle suddenly straightened in his chair. "Proc!" he yelled and clapped his front hooves together. The Proc entered the room. "Your Majesty!" "Come here, old fellow. Something rather interesting has come up. Excuse me, Potters, just for a moment." The Wangdoodle got up and limped with the Proc to one of the tall windows where they stood in quiet, close conversation. Lindy tugged at Ben's sleeve. "What do you suppose is going to happen?" she whispered. "I don't know. Wouldn't it be great if the professor could somehow get here after all?" "Oh, gosh, my stomach just went all funny." "Mine, too," said Tom. The Wangdoodle clapped the Proc on the back and turned to the children. "We have decided that it would be good if you tried to help your friend across the bridge, but only one may go." The Proc said, "I advised His Majesty that it would be safer if only one was allowed out of the palace gates. If all three of you went, there would be no guarantee that you would bring the professor back." "But of course we'd try to bring him back. That's the whole point, isn't it?" said Ben. "I'm not sure," the Proc replied. "What if he does not make it, in spite of your help? What if he chooses not to come?" "It is possible. No, I think he'd be more inclined to try to reach the palace if he knew that two of you were here, being held hostage." "Hostage?" Ben was horrified. "You can't hold us hostage. You can't keep us here against our will." "Well, I'm hoping it won't come to that. I rather thought you'd see the sense of this," replied the Proc. Tom said, "We can leave any time we want. All we have to do is turn around and go home." The Proc smiled. "I'm afraid you're wrong there. You see, I have your hats. There's no going home without them." The children gasped and remembered too late the professor's warning about taking off their scrappy caps. There was a moment's silence. Tom growled, "I might have guessed you'd be up to some double-crossing trick." The Wangdoodle interrupted brightly. "Oh, now let's not get in a tizzy. There hasn't been a tizzy around here in years. Have some more wodge, and let's discuss this in a civilized manner. Proc, you silly old thing, you do lay it on a bit thick sometimes. This all seems very simple." He looks at the children. "You want your professor to meet me. I am most anxious to meet him. The surest way to get him here is for two of you to remain and one of you to go, and that's all there is to it. Now, which one of you will it be?" Lindy turned to Ben. Ben glanced quickly at Tom. The Proc leaned across the throne and whispered, "Might I suggest the little girl, sire?" "Really?" The Wangdoodle looked surprised. She seems to have the brightest imagination, Your Majesty. Ah, of course. He nodded in comprehension. Ben stepped forward. We think Lindy should go, Your Majesty. Very sensible. The Wangdoodle was pleased. Proc, escort the young lady to the bridge, will you? Hey, wait a minute, Lindy protested. I can't cross that big bridge all by myself. What if that awful bird comes back to get me? The Wangdoodle reassured her. I give you my solemn promise that the Gaiuscutus will not bother you. She turned to the boys. Do I have to do this? Must it be me? Lindy, if anyone can convince the professor to cross that bridge, it's you. He'll listen to you. Ben placed his hands on her shoulders and looked at her solemnly. Think how important this is to the professor. Remember all that he's done for us. Can you be brave and do this for him? Tom said, Remember Halloween, Lindy? You were terrific then. Crossing a bridge is nothing compared to all the things we've been through lately, added Ben. Lindy thought about it. Oh, rats, she said in a resigned tone. But I'll need my scrappy cap. I can't go without my scrappy cap. The Wangdoodle nudged the Proc. Get a scrappy cap. Your Majesty, is that wise? The professor might just send her on home. The hats are the secret, you see. That's what helped them get here. Yes, and if they hadn't come here, we'd never had heard of this remarkable discovery. It's a risk, and we have to take it. So give her the scrappy cap, silly. The Proc reached into his pocket and produced Lindy's bonnet. She put it on. The Wangdoodle rose from his chair. Miss Potter, I cannot begin to impress on you the importance of this mission. If you can help your friend to cross the bridge and return to the palace, you will be doing both me and my country a vital service. His coming here could be the most significant thing to happen to us in a long, long time. He produced a beautiful gold ring. Take this ring with you and show it to your professor. It may help. Lindy gulped. Goodbye, everyone. She reached for the Proc's hand. They walked together through the courtyards and the gardens back to the bronze gates. The Proc swung them open wide. Lindy's heart sank as she gazed out at the long silk span that stretched in front of her. It seemed a tremendous distance to the other side. I wish I didn't have to do this, she said in a small voice. The Proc was surprisingly gentle. I will stand right here and wait for you. There's no need to be afraid. You can't come with me? I'm afraid not. I don't think the professor would be able to concentrate if I were around. Okay, well, here I go. Lindy took a deep breath, grasped the silk handrails firmly, and began to walk. Okay, we're going to stop there, and we'll see what happens next time. Bye-bye.